minutes after 12, so I would know whether to say good morning or good afternoon. So, good afternoon, and welcome to our first Hungry for History of 2016. The programs are sponsored by the Friends of the North Carolina Room and the North Carolina staff, and we welcome you on behalf of that organization. And feel free to find out more about the Friends of the North Carolina Room. We have information here. Today our program is Rick Russell. He's going to talk about Sulphur Springs and as seen through the life of Robert Henry. And so I'm just going to turn it over to you now. Oh, sorry. Did want to mention we have our next program is a Hungry for History nighttime edition. It'll be at 6 o'clock on March 24th, and that will be Bill Jamerson talking about the Civilian Conservation Corps in Western North Carolina. And so now, Rick, I will turn it over to you. Thank you all for being here.
Can you hear me back there? I'm not very used to using these things.
A little louder, please.
And it ties into the history of the Sulphur Springs Hotel. And here we go. This is Robert Henry. He's a happy guy. Of course, he's 95 years old now. So, you know, I don't know. He looks pretty gruff and angry, but if you read the book, you might see that it kind of fits his personality. Who was Robert Henry? He's a veteran of the Revolutionary War. Early Buncombe County settler. He owned thousands of acres of land here. He was Buncombe County's first school teacher, surveyor, a lawyer, and a physician. He did doctoring for a while around the neighborhood until he had to perform a cesarean section, and then he decided he didn't want to be a doctor anymore. A businessman, he owned a huge plantation and later on a resort, and he was a slave owner. About him personally, he's been called as brave as a lion. He's also been called a liar, a fraud, an imposter. His appearance in court was more of the criminal side than the lawyer side. He shunned the normal attire. He would rather dress like the Native Americans, and he wore moccasins. Sometimes he didn't even wear shoes to court. There's a lot of stuff here. After the war, sometime between the end of the war and 1799, Robert learned the profession of surveying, and he was really good at it. When it came time to survey the North Carolina-Tennessee line, the North Carolina commissioners, McDowell, Matthews, and Vance, appointed him as the head surveyor. They were all veterans of the war, and McDowell and Vance had been at Kings Mountain too. This is how they would have stayed. It's called a bark camp. There was an evening at camp after a rainy day when they're sitting around the fire, and the younger members were asking the older members about Kings Mountain, tell stories about Kings Mountain. It was decided that General Vance should write it all down into a narrative, which he did. It was preserved by Robert Henry, kept it for many, many years. And then that was on May 24th, 1799. That manuscript was used almost 100 years later when Robert Henry's son gave it to Lyman Draper, who was used for a lot of the writings of the heroes of Kings Mountain. The other side of that was Tuckasegee Ford, which is now the Whitewater Center. When Robert was about 8 years old, he took a trip with his father to Charlotte. The story is that he'd been bitten by a fox. Family didn't know if he was going to come down with rabies or not, so he went with his father to Charlotte. There was a big meeting there. The men were upset, citizens were upset about what was happening in the northeastern states with the British military and taxation of the whole bit. This is in 1775 at the courthouse. Robert's laying in the back. He's supposed to be laying on his dad's great coat. And here's a commotion going on, clapping and yells of hurrah. And what it was the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence. They had just signed that in 1775. People threw up their hats and shouted. That was over a year before the national recognized Declaration of Independence. It's still debatable today, but he says that it was there. And a lot of other people say it was there too. So we're going to fast forward through the war. It's all the way up to 1780 now. And Patrick Ferguson is in the Carolinas, threatening to take men in the army, boys in the army. He's telling the mountain men that he's going to lay waste to their land, take their women if they didn't become loyalists to the crown. Well, the Over Mountain men didn't take too kindly to that. So they gathered in Tennessee, came down to South Carolina. They were going to hunt down Ferguson. Robert was he joined a little group of men and boys where he lived, and they called themselves the South Fork Boys. They rode over and joined up with the Over Mountain men in South Carolina. And then they were in pursuit of Ferguson. Ferguson had taken a stand on the top of Kings Mountain on October 7, 1780, and the Over Mountain men surrounded the base of the mountain. Robert was with those men from Lincoln County. They were stationed on the northeastern side of the mountain. They did a charge up the hill, and as they did, a British soldier, well, I shouldn't say British soldier, because all the fighters except for Ferguson up on Kings Mountain were actually loyalists, American loyalists to the British crown that were fighting with Ferguson. But on the way up, he met one of those men coming down. The bayonet of the loyalist slid down his rifle. His rifle went off, killed the loyalist, but the bayonet from the rifle impaled his hand to his thigh. So he pretty much laid there the rest of the time during the battle until his friend came down from up above and put his foot on his leg and grabbed the bayonet. I don't know if the rifle was still attached or not, and yanked it out. And Robert had said later that hurt worse than getting bayoneted itself. Then they hear shouting come from the top of the mountain. Apparently Ferguson had been killed. They heard the flag was up, and then the Whigs shouted hurrah for liberty, which is what Robert wrote later. A few months go by. Robert's recovering from his wounds. Actually, it's kind of calmed down around the area, around the Tuckasegee Ford, and Robert's actually back in school. They're in school for 3 days. Robert's brother was in the Patriot Army. Comes to school and says that Tarleton's in the area, and he wants to snatch young men and make them musicians in the British Army. And somebody mentioned one time that it wouldn't be so bad to be a musician, but if you think about it, musicians were in the front and they didn't have any weapons. But anyway, they hid out that night because they were afraid. And the next morning they heard that the British were camped alongside the Catawba River and were going to cross over towards Charlotte. So they figured they'd go check it out. And I'll go back one. They found that the British were camped on the west side of the Catawba River. So they went up the river, went to a friend's house named Knighton, and they feasted on potatoes and whiskey. And the more whiskey that they had, the braver they got. So Robert says, if somebody will give me a gun, I'm going to go up there and join up with the Americans. So he got a gun, his friend got a gun. They go up there. They're stationed over on the eastern side. of the Catawba River with Davidson's troops. And in the morning, Robert wakes up and he hears a lot of commotion. Horses, there's people yelling, there's, I guess you call it gurgling from the river. Apparently what happened, there's two fords that cross the river there. One goes straight across, which is shallow. And then there's a deeper one that curves down to the southeast, which is deeper. And the river was swollen from recent rains. It was real fast and high. And the British had taken their horses into the deeper ford. And they were starting to get washed away and drowned. Eventually, the army prevailed. They made it across the Catawba. Americans had slowed them down some. But seeing the battle was over, Robert and his friends took off. The Americans retreated. The next morning, well, this is an artist's depiction of what it might look like along the river there. Next morning, they went down to one of the neighbors' fish traps, and they found 13, 14 of bodies within the traps. And he says we pushed them into the water, and they floated off, and each went to his own home. But this map has the north and south switched around. See, it has North Carolina on the top, it has Tennessee on the bottom. And it's kind of hard to read. They have the flip around where you think it should be, but then the writing is upside down. They did survey further on. They went down, the first time they went down to Paint Rock. And at that time, or a few years before that, supposedly there was drawings on the rocks there, according to one of the other surveyors, Strother. Humans, wild beasts, fish, and fowls were to be seen plainly made with red paint. And that brings us to Buncombe County. Robert started acquiring land pretty early, 1786. And then in 1793 he was the first school teacher at Union Academy. In 1795, his son writes he was on top of the Great Black Mountain, which is now called Mount Mitchell. Had a survey in 1799. He was the first resident lawyer in Buncombe County. Became the Superior, or the CMA, as clerk and master of equity of the Superior Court. Buncombe County solicitor, clerk of Superior Court, and then he finally became a defense attorney. The family story is he had 63 cases and he only lost 3. But I could not research all those. I couldn't find all those cases, so I don't know about that. When he was 47, he married Dorcas Bell Love, who was 17. She's the daughter of Robert Love, who was the founder of Waynesville. He was also a Revolutionary War veteran. Robert had met him while they were on the survey of the state line. Because Robert Love was a guide on a portion of that. And he'd probably met him far earlier than that, because they were all over. Robert Love and Robert and Robert's brother Joseph were all over the court records earlier in Buncombe and Haywood County. So he probably knew Dorcas Bell since she was born. 1815, he bought 770 acres around Hominy Creek. This is basically where Melvin Hills subdivision is now. On the upper left corner is Haywood Road, which is Smoky Park Highway. And that little open area there is where the DMV and Goodwill is right now. And the road coming down from the very top, Bear Creek Road, goes all the way down to the bottom, and then the creek down at the bottom is Hominy Creek. I discovered the Sulphur Springs the last of February 1827. Now he says I discovered the Sulphur Springs, but I have read where he discovered it with his slave Sam. I've read where Sam discovered it by himself, but Robert, of course, is going to say he discovered it. And he put a rock basin in there in 1834. This was a turning point for what would become West Asheville. another turning point. His daughter, Polly Henry, married Reuben Deaver, 1830, and she was only 14. Reuben Deaver had lived with Robert Love when he was growing up, so Robert Henry probably met him at some visit over to Robert Love's place. So they decided they're going to start build a boarding house, and it was very successful. So they built another one on top of the hill. They called it the Corner House, and it was called Deaver's Sulphur Springs. The description, 1837, on a high hill between two branches about 200 yards from each, in the form of an L, one side about 150 feet long, the other 120. Two-story with piazzas running all around. Upstairs is divided into 29 or 30 lodging rooms. That was successful too. Now you have Bear Creek Road coming down from the north, and you see the springs there on the left-hand side. That is right behind the Goodwill today. The hotel site is up on top of the hill between Clarendon, I'll get that when you put another map. It's on top of the hill in Malvern Hills. And then down below, if you'll note Hominy Creek, the loop that's in there. That loop's not there anymore. The section that goes straight across, you take Bear Creek Road down, there's a stoplight at like a 4 section, and then Sand Hill Road goes off one way, and if you keep going, you turn to the left down Bear Creek Road, you'll go across a little bridge. That little bridge goes over that straight section there, which was not originally Hominy Creek. That's actually the race for a mill that was put in there. That little section was dug by Robert Henry's slaves. So when you think you're crossing, well, it is Hominy Creek now, but not really. The loop part is now all dried up. That's just an overlay over on a Google map that shows that everything still fits. Pretty much the roads that are today. Bear Creek Road is a little straighter now. You see within that loop, there's a building, that's the Crossroads Assembly Church. This is a document that shows that Reuben Deaver rented Robert Henry's slaves for the building of that race and for other things. You can see Dublin was $8 a month, Sam's $10 a month. There's a lady down here named Julia, it was $5 a month, and you'll hear more about her in a little bit. Just a normal business transaction according to them. This is Malvern Hills now, hotel site right between Clarendon and Cranford Roads. And you see the shaded area down below, that's along Keeney Creek. Henry Deaver had that all clear. And the springs are down there, it was like a large meadow, they called it the meadow. By 1848, the resort was kind of like a village, and you could stay there for $5 a week. Had room for 200 people, there was cabins all scattered around. They had a spring house and a bathing house down by the springs, the Sulphur Springs. There was a delivery system for the spring water. A wire and bucket line that went down to the springs, all the way up to the hills, about a quarter of a mile. Had a man up at the hotel that would run it. It'd go down, the bucket would go down to the springs, scoop up some water, come around, and come back up to the hotel. And they actually drank that water. Maximum dose was a gallon a day of that sulfur water. And they used it externally for skin conditions. And they had a carriage house, they had a ballroom, a string band with freed slaves, bar, bowling alley, shuffleboards. There was a post office there. Reuben Deaver was the postmaster. They hired a confectionery and pastry cook from France, gardens, landscaping, orchards, green fields, livestock. He was self-supporting. This was in a notebook, a sketchbook in Robert Henry's possessions. And this one's not in the book because I can't be sure, but I think it's a sketch of one of the early hotel complexes. And there's another one of a view from the backside of the hotel, and this matches up with a photo from a later hotel that was there. These are the supplies that it took to build the bathing house. On the left-hand side, you can see 5 bathing tubs for $2 each, a water wheel and reservoir for $20, and 2 copper boilers. Some other supplies, claret wine, some kind of cigars, and port wine, gin, lemon syrup, matches, half a dozen gallons of pickles. And this is just an ad from 1836 for Sulphur Springs. Sulphur Springs, the proprietor of this far-famed and universally popular place of resort 5 miles from Asheville in the county of Buncombe, takes this method of stating to his friends in public that he is not dead nor asleep, but has made ample provision for supplying the wants of his patrons with all the substantials, delicacies, and luxuries of life, having supplied his house and bar with the most choice and elegant provisions and liquors, engaged a full supply of competent servants, one of the best flavors in America, and a band of first-rate musicians. He promises to prepare all that is asked for and charge nothing but what is reasonable. Sounds like a nice place. Of course, Robert was quite wealthy. He donated land, part of his land, for a cemetery. This is still in use today. And this little section here is his wife is buried there, his son, some of his grandsons, and Reuben Deaver's buried there. Robert is not. I'll get to him later. And way in the back, past that wooden fence, is a slave burial area with just unmarked stones. Now, this is located up by Asheville School. You take up Asheville School Road to the school on the right-hand side, you see a little gate. Just go down that road a little bit, and that's where the cemetery is. He also built a meeting house there right in front of the cemetery. He used it for church, politics, school. This is a page from, a portion of the page from the hotel register of Sulphur Springs that is here at the library. And I would pay attention to Mr. John Kite, Orangeburg, South Carolina. This is 1836, and this is an entry in Robert's notebook here. John Kite of South Carolina died and was buried on the 27th of August, 1836, and was the first that was buried at the Sulphur Springs Meeting House. So I just thought it gave a new meaning to the word checked out. I could not locate his headstone. Robert did a lot of traveling. He owned thousands of acres of land in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, West Tennessee. Some of it was assigned to him from war veterans, and he also went out there to survey land grants that veterans had obtained. He'd go up the Buncombe, became known as the Buncombe Turnpike, up the French Broad River to Warm Springs, and then across into Tennessee, and then on into Middle Tennessee. Now, on one of those trips, he rode at Hills Old Place on the Cumberland Mountain on the night of 12th November 1833. The stars shot and fell about as fast as a moderate shower of snow. So I checked out that date. Turns out that was the date of the Leonid meteor shower. And that particular one was the most spectacular this country had ever seen. And this was an artist's depiction of what it looked like that night. people thought the world was coming to an end. Robert liked his alcohol. And in the early days, the employees would notice that he was kind of light while working. And one time, he was in the boat making the mill pond, and they were taking rocks and putting it down. He sinks the boat, so they wouldn't let him charge the boat anymore. And it only got worse. It became the most cruel and barbarous, according to Dorcas Bell. And finally, she left. Basically, he said, "You better leave, or I'm going to make you leave." And the funny thing about this, it says that she left on June 1836, Dorcas Bell Henry, and then somebody erased that part there. It looks like Ann somebody. It looks like the last name might be Jared, but I'm not sure that it was. Maybe she had a boyfriend. But she never came back to live. She came back and helped with the hotel and stuff from time to time. And finally, they were divorced. The court said Robert had maliciously turned the plaintiff out of doors and made her condition burdensome and life intolerable. So after she left, and Reuben Deaver was in charge of the hotel, Robert decides to go to Western North Carolina because the government was receiving land from the Cherokee via treaty. They needed to go to the land, survey it, parcel it up, see what it was worth. Robert was a surveyor. He went out there and helped survey. And by doing that, of course, he knew where the best lands were. Putting this claim he got. This one was a survey that he did on a creek called Compass Creek. And the reason it's called Compass Creek is because he dropped his compass in there. He had a hard time getting it out, so this is what it looks like now. It's still called Compass Creek. And the slave that was, he rented Reuben Deaver for $5 a month. He took her out there with him and her children, grandchildren. She built a house at the bottom of the mountain. The mountain now is called Julia Knob or Julia Ridge. That name is still on the map. Now, when Reuben and Robert started their business together, they had an agreement. And the agreement was that Reuben would put out the money and the work, Robert would reimburse him. And over the years, Reuben became dissatisfied because he wasn't getting the reimbursement. They tried to arbitrate it, finally ended up in court, went all the way to the North Carolina Supreme Court. Took several years. And finally, the result was that, yes, Robert Henry, you owe Reuben Deaver this money. If you don't pay him, you have to give him the property. So Robert says, okay, I'll pay him. But what he did was then, he sells the property to his son. His son assumed all the debts. Robert didn't have any debts anymore, so he still never paid him. In the meantime, Reuben Deaver dies, so he never got his payment for his land or his work. This is excuse me. This is his son, William. He took over the hotel and the land. His wife, Cornelia. Cornelia Henry's journals are here at the library. She wrote them from before the Civil War, during, and after. And I'll have a compilation of those for sale back there in the back, along with the Robert Henry book. This is them in later years. William had hired a man named C.C. Terry to manage the hotel. It was time for him to leave. He didn't want to leave. So there was another court battle. Bad blood between them. There was an incident down at the sawmill where Terry and his boys were liquored up, and they enticed or forced one of Henry's slaves to come down there and play the fiddle while they danced. William Henry was really mad about that. Took a couple of his slaves down there. There was a big brawl. People were hurt. Nobody got killed. One person had a cut neck, the other had a hole in his ear. But And then they got court orders against the Terrys, but the funny thing is, a couple weeks later, the hotel burns down. The hotel and the outbuilding, so coincidence, I don't know. It's suspicious anyway. And they were arson fires. Robert died in 1863. He's buried out in Clay County. That's why he's not buried here locally. Just an old photo of his grave, flowers being put on his grave. His grave's about 25 yards from a private residence right now. This is what it looks like. And there weren't enough lawsuits between Deaver and Robert Henry. The sons had to fight each other too, because Robert didn't leave them all the same thing. Some he left land and money, and some he didn't leave anything. Of course, the ones that didn't get anything weren't satisfied, so they went to court. This one actually lasted 17 years until it was finally sold to the Falls of Peace Manufacturing Company. They sell the hotel part to Thomas Van Gilder and Edwin Carrier in 1866. So this comes to the modern age of the hotel. In 1887, Carrier builds a new hotel on the same spot as the old Sulphur Springs Hotel was, Carrier Sulphur Springs. The view from the backside. And they renamed it Belmont Hotel, and then they added another wing in 1890. Carrier started developing West Asheville and the West Asheville Improvement Company. On the left-hand side is where the hotel was, in the middle of the left-hand side. He had an electric streetcar, electric railroad that went to Asheville, came out to the hotel. And he built a steel bridge over the French Broad River, horse track down there where Cary Park is now, the electric rails, and he had a power plant at Hominy Creek. Times in later years of what we think was that power plant. That one gets washed away, and later on he builds another one, which is closer up to Cary, where Cary Park is now, by the old bridge. One of his ads for the races. All the amenities of the Hotel Belmont, the springs and steam heat. I think it was the only electric elevator, or the first electric elevator in the country. Gas lights, electric lights, dancing, all the same kind of things they had at the earlier hotel. But pay attention to the first part where it says fireproof brick structure. This is the insurance map. Funny thing about the insurance map, it says no hose or fire apps of any kind. Either they're very confident or they weren't required or something, but you know, just another hotel burns down. Nobody's hurt or nobody dies. This is what was left in 1903. You can still find bricks up there and other melted glass and melted metal in the backyards of folks that live up there. We moved to 1893. The Swannanoa Hunt Club had a building down by the springs. They had fox hunts around that area. Later on, when they moved this, it became the Asheville Country Club. Then in 1906, Otto Schoenfeld bought the property. He was the first U.S. Olympic fencer. He fenced in the Olympics in Paris. And he was going to build a physical training school. This is one he visited with his family in 1907. The pavilion in the back would have been left over from Carrier's hotels down by the springs. He built a more sturdy concrete pavilion around the springs himself. That didn't pan out, somebody else buys it. Sulphur Springs Park really was going to build another big hotel right on the same spot. That didn't happen. The city of Asheville was going to buy the property in 1920 to develop a park. Looks kind of like the greenways from today. So Asheville's been Greenway minded for 100 years. Finally, Newton Anderson buys the property, and he's going to make a very nice subdivision. Builds a clubhouse right down by the springs. There's a golf course in what used to be called the Meadow. All along Caney Creek was a golf course there. Now, if you look at this structure on the left, the octagon, and if it looks familiar, it's because it incorporated that earlier pavilion from Schoenfeld. We put it right in the building. And notice the stairs there. We'll see those stairs a little bit. Another view of the country club and the golf course, which would have been the Meadow. And this is a plaque that used to be in the building on the wall of the clubhouse. This is now in the back room of the library, a statue from Robert Henry's granddaughter about the discovery of the springs. So we had all this tragedy. Robert Henry's first house burns, the hotel burns, Carrier's hotel burns, Deaver dies young, had separation divorce, they had lawsuits. And the question was why? Well, Foster Sonley thought he knew the reason why, or he wrote the reason why. He said it's because of the Indians' curse. Legend of the Cherokees. And his story is, in the middle you can see the dotted lines of the loop there, which was the old Hominy Creek. This is where Moore camped during his Indian expeditions west during the Revolutionary War. And supposedly, they were having problems with coyotes getting into their provisions. And they poisoned some meat, put it by the stream, either in the water or next to it. And the Cherokee scout got hold of it, ate it, died an agonizing death. But when he did, before he died, he put a curse on the water, the springs, whoever did it, all the people around, all the land around, anybody associated. So this is why that Sonley says all these tragedies happen. This Cherokee scout was supposed to have been buried in a sitting position next to a giant old white oak tree. And believe it or not, that oak tree is still there. It doesn't look very big there, but it measures like 14 feet around the trunk. That's close to the bridge over the race over Hominy Creek. What remains of these things and actions? Pretty much nothing. Of the springs, the dams, the hotel, the meadow. That's what's left of the springs. This is where the Malvern Hills Clubhouse was. That's all torn down, gone. This is the pavilion that Schoenfeld built in 1907 or whatever it was. We have a few views of that. This is the inside, the ceiling starting to fall in. This is down to the middle where the water would have been stored. Underneath this ivy are remnants of bathing tubs, either from the earlier era or from the clubhouse. Those are those stairs that you saw in the other picture that was going into the building. You can still hear water running in some of those tubs down in there, but you can't get down in there without removing all that ivy. This is what's left of the meadow along Caney Creek. This is where one of the dams and mill would have been on the race. See the tree, if you get close to that tree, you can see remnants of part of the structure there. So that's all that's left after this sign on Smoky Park Highway. About Sulphur Springs. And a sketch, which I believe is Robert Henry from that sketchbook that did the ones at the hotel and the scenery on the back view. That's the story of Robert Henry and the Sulphur Springs. Part of it. Are there any questions? I'll be in the back when we're done with some books. Yes, sir.
Henry married Colonel Love's daughter.
Right.
Bill Thomas married Colonel Love's daughter. And in 38, you said he was out in Clay County or wherever, I don't know if it was Clay County, surveying the Cherokee land that would have been a result of the removal.
Right.
I've never heard Henry and Thomas paired in any kind of readings.
No. I haven't heard anything about them being together or one mentioning the other, or Robert mentioning him anyway. Robert, I think, was kind of a loner out there. You know, out in the middle of nowhere at the time, along the creek there. You know, like you said, it was during the removal, which became known as the Trail of Tears. Where Robert lived was right next to one of the trails, one of the Indian trails, Cherokee trails. He must have seen them being herded over to the fort in what's now Hayesville.
He and Thomas would have been brother-in-laws, and Thomas is protecting the property while he's trying to buy it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting.
Yeah, he surveyed it and saw the ones he liked and snatched them up.
I have a question.
Yes.
It said buried briefly at the bottom that his slave Julia was buried next to him.
Oh, yeah.
Was there anything?
There used to be a sign there. The sign's not there anymore, but there is a little rock there. That's the only visible evidence. Yeah. Yes?
Is there evidence that Robert Henry was the last living Revolutionary soldier?
Draper said, or somebody said, surely the last living, but I don't think that he was. I think there was a couple other people that lived longer than him. Because they were younger. Well, he was pretty young when he was there. I think there was a couple others that were older. You know, that picture of him photographed, there's not a whole lot of photographs of men that fought in the Revolution. There are some, but... Yes, sir.
Who owns the property that the spring is on now?
Where the spring is owned by Goodwill. And Goodwill's been approached in the past. They said they're never going to use that land. They just as soon sell it. We keep waiting to see, and we've tried to get that part of the Greenway project.
Well, isn't that the sewer right away run right along adjacent to that spring?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it goes down right down the creek,
Yeah.
Caney Creek.
And the latest I hear from them is they deny that they own it, so.
They denied that they owned it?
They do. But I don't think that's the truth. We're working on
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just want to say there is a hope for Greenway up along Caney Creek and up into that property. And the last I heard, the Goodwill did own it, and could be happy to have that, you know, be part of their property as well. But that piece of it is pretty mushy with other springs and stuff. The lower
Yeah.
part where the golf course was, you showed the path in that picture, that you really can walk the path,
Mhm.
although it's covered with poison ivy in the summertime.
Yeah, in the early days, you say it was mushy. Yeah, when people describe walking on that areas around the spring, they said it was like walking on a sponge.
Yeah. If you go over there now, you don't want to really be walking around there too much.
Yeah, I've tried. And Deaver and Robert Henry and all their workers and slaves in the early days cleared all that grass out of there, put in ditches, and drained all that. And then once it went back wild again, it kind of went back to the way it was. Yes, ma'am?
Is there any record of any insurance claims for the fires?
No, the first one was, I'm not sure about Carrier, but I know that the first one that burnt, the original one, was valued at $12,000 and they didn't have insurance. I don't know if Carrier did or not, but I know that after that, he just kind of quit and went back to the lumber business or something. But he also had big financial losses in Florida because he had orange groves down there and it was a big freeze.
I was just wondering where Goodwill purchased that from. Who had Goodwill purchased? Must have gone through hundreds of hands.
Yeah, several, it was very complicated trying to figure out who owned what and when. They may have bought it, I think some of that land in that particular area was owned by Robert's granddaughter, last name of Arthur. There's an Arthur Road down there too. They may have bought it from them, from her, or whoever bought it. I guess I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Okay, I'll be in the back for more questions.